What if everything you thought about Gallino's moves in Season 3 is completely wrong? What if he didn't invest in CTT at all? What if the real prize isn't a company, but a person, Tommy? This theory changes everything we know about the power game in LANDMAN, and if it's true, the next episodes could play out in ways no one saw coming. Every decision, every meeting, every whisper from Gallino might have been part of a plan nobody noticed until now. Season 3 starts with Gallino making waves in the business world. And at first, it looks like all eyes are on CTT. Everyone assumes he's making a huge investment, something that could reshape the company's future and give him a dominant position. On the surface, it seems like a classic Gallino move, big, flashy, and public enough to intimidate competitors. But when you look closer at his behavior, things don't quite add up. Gallino's interactions with CTT executives are oddly distant. Almost dismissive, he asks questions that seem like he's curious, but never actually commits. And there's no real plan being executed on the CTT front. The board meetings, the late-night calls, even the subtle power plays, none of it leads to a concrete investment. It's like CTT was just a distraction, a smokescreen to hide the real target. And that target might be someone much closer, much more influential, and much more controllable than a company ever could be. That person is Tommy. Tommy's arc in Season 3 has been strange but telling. He's at a crossroads, vulnerable and under pressure from both allies and rivals. His decisions seem driven by survival, and he's caught between loyalties he can't fully commit to. Gallino notices this. Every glance, every question, every small interaction suggests that he's studying Tommy, testing him, and gauging exactly what kind of leverage he can have. Unlike CTT, which is unpredictable and filled with corporate politics, Tommy is human, emotional, and potentially loyal if handled correctly. From Gallino's perspective, people are easier to control than companies. They have weaknesses, desires, fears, and blind spots. Tommy has all of these, and Gallino knows it. Every subtle move Gallino makes seems to pull Tommy closer into his orbit, often without Tommy even realizing it. He isn't just influencing Tommy, he's shaping him, molding him into a resource that could serve Gallino's ambitions perfectly. The more you examine the interactions between Gallino and Tommy, the more you notice a pattern. Gallino rarely discusses the details of CTT's business plans with anyone outside his inner circle. Meetings about CTT are short, vague, and sometimes confusing, almost like he's intentionally leaving the impression that CTT is his focus. Meanwhile, Tommy becomes the center of Gallino's attention in ways that seem subtle but calculated. A seemingly casual meeting, a choice of words, a slight offer of help. Each of these small moments builds a web around Tommy that is hard to see unless you're looking closely. And that's the brilliance of it. While the world watches the headlines about CTT, Gallino quietly secures influence over Tommy. There are also hints in the show that support this idea. Gallino's body language around Tommy changes depending on the environment. He's cautious, careful, and almost protective at times, but always calculating. There are moments when Gallino's attention drifts from public matters to private conversations with Tommy, signaling that the real strategy isn't public at all. And Tommy's reactions, subtle as they are, show a mix of confusion, trust, and dependency, which makes him the perfect candidate to be bought or influenced without direct confrontation. Unlike a company, which could resist, fail, or make independent decisions, a person like Tommy is malleable, exactly the kind of asset a strategic mind like Gallino would want in Season 3. By the end of this first section, it's clear that the CTT investment story may just be a distraction. Gallino's real game appears to be much more personal and much more insidious. Tommy isn't just a character caught in the chaos. He might be the chess piece that Gallino needs to secure power, influence events behind the scenes, and reshape the world around him without anyone realizing it. If this theory is correct, then every interaction, every hint, and every decision we've seen so far is building toward a shocking reveal. Gallino didn't invest in a company he invested in Tommy, and that changes everything about how we understand Season 3. When you start piecing together Gallino's actions in Season 3, a pattern begins to emerge, one that doesn't fit the idea of him investing in CTT. On the surface, it seems logical. Gallino has the money, the influence, and the reputation to take control of a company like CTT. But if you look at the timing of his moves, the nature of his interactions, and the subtle inconsistencies in his behavior, it becomes clear that CTT may have been nothing more than a decoy. Every step he took regarding CTT seems calculated to maintain appearances, to let the world believe that he is making a conventional investment, while his real focus is somewhere else entirely. Meetings that should have been intense and strategic are surprisingly shallow, almost casual. Phone calls are brief, almost perfunctory, with no real negotiation or commitment in some moments. Gallino even seems disinterested in the day-to-day operations of CTT, which is unusual for someone known to micromanage every move in his sphere of influence. This raises a question: if CTT isn't where Gallino is placing his power, what is? Looking closer at the boardroom and strategic moments, there are subtle signs that CTT isn't the target. Gallino often appears distracted, sometimes looking past the discussions as if his attention is elsewhere. There are times when he listens politely, nods along, and even praises certain executives, but the praise feels superficial, almost rehearsed. It's like he is saying what the audience expects him to say, maintaining the illusion that he's invested in the company. Analysts in the show often comment on his enthusiasm for CTT, but Gallino never seems to genuinely engage with the company's real challenges. His actions suggest that the company's performance is not crucial to his strategy. Instead, his attention shifts toward individuals around him, particularly those who could become levers for his long-term plans. This is where the idea that Tommy is the true target gains traction. Even beyond the boardroom, Gallino's network and behind-the-scenes activity hint that his interest is not corporate but personal. He subtly orchestrates encounters that position him near Tommy, often coinciding with key moments of tension or vulnerability in Tommy's life. There's a methodical quality to these interactions, each one designed to make Tommy feel observed, valued, or guided without ever being overtly manipulative. It's quiet control, the kind that is far more powerful than owning a company. Gallino doesn't need a legal contract or corporate shareholding to exert influence over Tommy. He simply leverages the right mix of attention, subtle pressure, and incentives to shape Tommy's decisions. By comparison, his CTT strategy looks superficial, almost like theater. Another key piece of evidence lies in the timing of Gallino's so-called investment. While the public narrative focuses on big announcements and press coverage of CTT, Gallino is simultaneously seen making moves in private, checking on Tommy's whereabouts, monitoring his relationships, and carefully evaluating how external pressures affect his choices. The contrast is striking. Where the CTT story is public, linear, and transactional, his engagement with Tommy is discreet, adaptive, and deeply personal. It's almost as if Gallino is treating Tommy like a dynamic asset, one that can change shape and value depending on circumstances, unlike a company, which has fixed structures and predictable outcomes. The more you examine Gallino's pattern, the more it resembles a strategy of human investment rather than corporate acquisition. Finally, there are small narrative cues in Season 3 that suggest the audience is being misdirected. Certain plot points emphasize CTT's growth or decline, but these moments never directly affect Gallino in a meaningful way. He reacts, but his reactions are measured, almost nonchalant, lacking the urgency or aggression one would expect if he had a true financial stake. Meanwhile, when Tommy makes a critical choice, the tension spikes not because of CTT, but because Tommy's decision directly affects Gallino's unseen plan. This discrepancy between the apparent stakes and the real stakes signals that CTT is a smokescreen. The real prize, the one that matters most in Season 3, is Tommy himself. And this subtle layering of misdirection is classic Gallino, keeping everyone's eyes on the wrong target while quietly maneuvering to control the element that truly gives him power. By the end of this section, the evidence starts to paint a clear picture. Every distraction, every superficial show of interest in CTT, and every subtle, strategic interaction with Tommy points to a different story. Gallino's investment isn't in a company. It's in a person, and if this is correct, it changes how every decision, every alliance, and every betrayal in Season 3 should be understood. What looked like a corporate game is really a personal one, and Tommy is right at the center of it, looking closely at Gallino's moves. It becomes clear that Tommy isn't just a side character or an incidental pawn in the larger game. He might be the central asset Gallino has been working to acquire. The idea of buying a person doesn't mean money in the traditional sense. It's influence, leverage, and control. Gallino doesn't need contracts or shares to make Tommy valuable. To him, he simply orchestrates circumstances so that Tommy's choices, loyalties, and vulnerabilities. The season gives hints of this pattern through the way Gallino monitors and influences Tommy. There are moments that seem casual, a hand on his shoulder, a piece of advice given in passing, a glance at a critical moment. Each of these small gestures is part of a larger strategy. Tommy begins to make decisions that seem like his own, but they are subtly influenced by Gallino's unseen presence. This is manipulation disguised as mentorship. Loyalty building under the guise of friendship or opportunity. In every story of strategic control, the most powerful method is to make someone think they are acting independently while in reality, their path has been carefully shaped. Gallino's behavior with Tommy matches this approach almost perfectly. Even dialogue and character interactions hint at this strategy. Gallino rarely pressures Tommy openly. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't coerce. Instead, he creates situations where Tommy's options are limited, subtly nudging him toward outcomes that serve Gallino's larger goals. When Tommy faces challenges, Gallino is always present in some form, offering solutions or guidance that appear helpful, but ultimately tie Tommy closer to him. These moments are almost invisible if you're not paying attention, but together they form a consistent pattern. The combination of attention, timing, and psychological insight allows Gallino to own Tommy without ever needing to take legal control or public credit. Another layer of evidence lies in Tommy's responses. His behavior shifts in ways that suggest growing dependence or alignment with Gallino's objectives. At times, Tommy hesitates, questioning his own choices, and in these moments, Gallino's subtle presence exerts maximum influence. The theory becomes stronger when you notice that the stakes involving CTT never produce the same tension or internal conflict as Tommy's decisions. The tension, the drama, the pivotal moments in Season 3, these all revolve around Tommy, not the company. Gallino's interest is personal, targeted, and precise. The investment he made isn't in assets or stock, it's in human capital, with Tommy as the centerpiece. Even Season 3's narrative structure supports this theory. Episodes often juxtapose Gallino's public moves with quiet, private scenes involving Tommy, showing that while the world focuses on corporate affairs, the real action is happening in the shadows. Tommy's growth choices and alliances are not random. They are subtly influenced by Gallino's timing and decisions. Every friendship Tommy forms, every risk he takes, every step he makes toward power seems calibrated to benefit Gallino. The more you analyze these moments, the more it appears that Gallino's real acquisition isn't CTT, it's a person who can move the pieces he wants across the board at will. By the end of this section, the theory becomes undeniable. Gallino's true goal in Season 3 is not corporate dominance through CTT, it's human dominance through Tommy. Every maneuver, every strategic choice, every calculated interaction all point toward a single conclusion. Gallino bought Tommy, not CTT. This shifts the lens through which we must view the season, transforming what seems like a story about business and competition into a story about control, manipulation, and the high stakes of influence over a single, pivotal individual. Understanding this changes not only how we see Gallino, but also how we interpret every alliance, betrayal, and decision in the episodes to come. Season 3 is packed with small, almost invisible details that suggest Gallino's real target isn't CTT, but Tommy. At first glance, these moments might seem inconsequential, just background interactions or throwaway dialogue. But when you start connecting the dots, a pattern emerges. One of the first clues is the way other characters react to Gallino around Tommy. People notice subtle shifts. Gallino becomes unusually calm, almost protective, when Tommy is involved. Whereas in boardroom or public scenes, he remains distant and analytical. It's as if Tommy triggers a different mode in him, one that isn't about wealth or reputation, but about control and influence. This behavioral contrast, repeated in multiple episodes, hints that Tommy occupies a special place in Gallino's plans beyond the surface story of corporate investments. Another subtle clue lies in timing and coincidences. Key scenes show Gallino appearing at critical moments in Tommy's life, not publicly, but behind the scenes, a decision Tommy struggles with, a threat he barely survives. A connection he risks forming all happen when Gallino is present in some form, either physically or indirectly. The repeated pattern isn't random. Writers have clearly designed these moments to hint at a deeper connection. CTT, by comparison, never sees this kind of orchestrated attention, projects progress without Gallino's constant intervention. Yet every small personal drama involving Tommy seems to intersect with Gallino's calculated timing. This contrast suggests a deliberate storytelling choice, signaling the audience that Tommy is the real asset and CTT is a red herring. Season 3 also contains dialogue that serves as hidden breadcrumbs, casual comments, offhand remarks, and subtle references to trust, loyalty, and influence are sprinkled throughout interactions between Gallino and other characters. Some lines that initially read as generic commentary gain a different meaning when viewed through the lens of this theory. For example, when Gallino discusses investing in the right people or having the right leverage, these phrases appear almost mundane, but they echo back to Tommy's trajectory. The writers are using dialogue to hint at the manipulation happening behind the scenes. It's not about companies, contracts, or stock. It's about human calculation. These verbal Easter eggs reinforce the idea that Gallino's real investment is in someone who can act, think, and respond according to his design. Visual storytelling adds another layer of subtle evidence. In multiple sequences, cameras linger on Tommy just long enough to create tension, paired with shots of Gallino observing or subtly influencing events. The juxtaposition suggests a cause-and-effect relationship. Gallino's presence or attention directly impacts Tommy's choices. These moments are so brief that casual viewers might miss them, but they are consistent throughout the season. Lighting, framing, and focus often draw a visual line between Gallino and Tommy, almost symbolically representing ownership or influence. Meanwhile, CTT sequences lack this careful visual emphasis, reinforcing the idea that the company isn't the central target. It's a classic technique used in storytelling. Guide the audience's subconscious attention toward the true narrative without overt exposition. Even secondary characters act as clues. Those who interact with Tommy often comment on how influenced or affected he seems by Gallino, whether he realizes it or not. Allies and rivals alike notice shifts in Tommy's decisions, hesitations, and sudden bold moves. These observations are rarely framed in the context of corporate strategy, but rather personal influence. The repeated pattern Gallino subtly shaping Tommy while remaining distant from CTT strengthens the theory that the investment is human, not corporate. These narrative and visual Easter eggs, combined with dialogue cues, timing, and behavioral contrasts, build a compelling web of evidence by piecing together these hidden clues. The theory gains undeniable credibility. Season 3's writers are clearly layering hints that Gallino's power doesn't come from money or shares in a company. It comes from influence, control, and strategic acquisition of a single key individual, Tommy. Every small detail, from timing to dialogue to visual emphasis, reinforces the same conclusion. Gallino didn't invest in CTT. He bought Tommy. The subtlety of these Easter eggs makes the reveal even more shocking, because the audience has been conditioned to focus on the corporate game while the true story unfolds quietly in the background. This layer of hidden storytelling demonstrates how meticulously Season 3 builds Gallino's master plan, and it reshapes how we interpret every scene, every decision, and every relationship in the unfolding drama. If Gallino truly bought Tommy instead of investing in CTT, the implications for the rest of Season 3 are massive, shifting the entire narrative from corporate maneuvering to personal manipulation and control. The first prediction centers on loyalty and alignment. Tommy, who has already shown signs of internal conflict, will gradually become an extension of Gallino's will. Every choice he makes, every alliance he forms, will not just be about survival or personal gain. It will subtly serve Gallino's broader strategy. We can expect Tommy to appear increasingly autonomous, but in reality, his trajectory will be guided by Gallino's unseen hand. This is classic manipulation. The subject believes they are acting independently while their options are subtly narrowed to what the manipulator desires. Season 3 will likely show Tommy making bold moves that appear spontaneous, but when viewed through this lens, they become a testament to Gallino's control. Next comes the domino effect on other characters. Those who once believed they could manipulate or influence Tommy will discover their efforts are less effective than they thought. Characters who oppose Gallino might think they are targeting a weak link in Tommy, but the reality will be that Tommy's decisions have been pre-shaped. This sets up a series of betrayals, unexpected outcomes, and shifting alliances. People may underestimate Tommy, thinking he is simply being influenced by circumstances, when in fact, Gallino has already positioned him to act as a strategic asset in the larger game. This could lead to shocking reversals. Characters who thought they were in control suddenly find that the